Hey everyone, and welcome to 1.21 Gigawatts. I am Peter, and joining me on this episode is Matt.
I'm the right-handed Doom.
And Tim's also here.
Mhm.
And Tim,
Yeah, I don't.
yes,
I was just gonna say I don't have anything clever to say.
You're the crown of flames.
we could tell.
The Crown of Flames, the Anung Un Rama of the
There you go.
podcast.
Oh god.
There you go, Tim.
So Tim being here is relevant because Tim happens to be a super fan of the thing we're about to talk about today, or more specifically the property it's based on. Because we're going to talk about Hellboy, the new Hellboy movie. We had two Hellboy movies in the 2000s from Guillermo del Toro, but we have a reboot.
And don't forget, we had two animated movies as well. So it was
Sword
a
of
total of
Storms is
4 movies.
Dope.
Yeah, dude.
Tim, I can't forget what I never knew existed.
Sword of Storms is the that's not the one set in Japan, right?
No, that is.
Okay. Yeah, that one's
Yeah,
dope. I have that one.
Yeah, and then Blood and Iron is the other one, which is really
Yeah.
good too. That one has werewolves in it.
How come I've never seen it, Tim?
Well, I'll show it to you next time you're here. Watch
Okay,
it.
cool.
So here's the thing. So we'll start spoiler free as we always do, and we'll give you a warning before we go into spoilers halfway through. Tim's a huge fan of the comics. Has read every Hellboy comic, every BPRD comic, and just about anything related.
Numerous spin-offs. I refer to it as I think it's a lot of people do, but the Mignola verse,
Sure.
as they call it. I've pretty much read every book that's come out of that.
So just to put this in perspective, before Tim went to the theater to see the new Hellboy movie, he posted on Twitter a series of Hellboy pins and said, "Which Hellboy pin should I wear to the movie?" He has a set of them. He has more than one.
And James beat me to my answer, which was all of them. So
I have a weird thing with pins because I don't like wearing stuff that kind of weighs me down, and I feel like usually, although these were really nice, I didn't realize how easy
Yeah.
they were. But sometimes I wear like the ones, and it kind of just feels like your shirt's like sagging or something. But I
Yeah.
just ended up going with the one that was his face, which was
Gotcha.
a really good one. But I basically obviously we all like comics and stuff, so we have like our individual fandoms, and I don't know if you guys have specific characters like this, but like Hellboy is the one character where I'm like, any piece of merchandise like I'll buy. Like that's kind of my rule. Like, I mean, as long as it's not super expensive, but anytime I see like an action figure, a pin,
Yeah,
whatever,
I was going to say, Tim,
miscellaneous thing.
there was a Hellboy car for sale. It was a Ferrari with the big horns in the front, and I feel like
you act like he doesn't own it. I've been to Tim's house.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, like I mean, there's other characters I would like to do that for as well, but then you just end up going broke. But
I
I
almost
used to, and then Zack Snyder happened. So,
I
That's
almost
true.
want a movie of like Tim's wife like sees like some expensive Hellboy merch and then tries to shield Tim from knowing it exists. So she like, runs around the house trying to like cut off the internet, make sure there's no evidence of it existing because
Well,
she, doesn't want all the
Well-
savings being spent on it.
Well, the funny thing is she does do that, but the reason why she does that though is so she can get them for me as gifts. Because when
Oh.
I'm kind of I don't really like those Funko Pops. I'm against them, but when they started releasing
As
the
am I,
Hellboy
Tim.
ones,
As am
hot
I.
take.
when they released the Hellboy ones, I was kind of like, should I get these? And then I asked my wife, I was like, I'm usually not into the pops, but I don't know, should I get these? And she was like very like flatly like, no, I don't think you should get them, which is weird because we usually have the bad habit of like supporting each other, like, hey, should I buy this stupid thing that we don't need? And we'll usually be like, yes. And so I was like, oh, that's weird that she's like very much against these out of everything.
How
And then
dare
of course,
she be supportive?
It was all
yeah.
a ruse.
But then of course, she got the whole set for me for my birthday, so it was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I see. And she also even she crochets a lot, and she crocheted me a Hellboy too, so I even have like original pieces that of Hellboy merch you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah.
Well, that sets up Tim's fandom quite easily, or more accurately, I should say, it sets up Tim's bias here early on,
How dare you?
which I think is relevant for this discussion. So, I want to give you my history with the franchise, which is I've only read like 1 or 2 volumes of Hellboy. Really liked them. Thought the books were really good. That was in the last few years. I don't like the original movies. I don't like Del Toro's 2 movies. And one of the reasons why I was excited about this movie early on, conceptually, this is before the trailers hit, was because they claimed they were going to go with a R-rated horror-focused movie. And I thought, yes, the thing I liked about the book when I tried it was the atmosphere. It was the slow building, like, you know, almost Lovecraftian kind of feeling to it, right? And then the trailer came out and it was like rock music playing with one-liners, and I was just like, this just looks like a watered-down version of the previous films. What's happening?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I really, really like the first two Del Toro movies. The first one introduced me to the world of Hellboy, so I really like that. And the second one I just think is phenomenal. It's
also worth mentioning your other fandom is Guillermo del Toro.
Love the man. Yeah, love everything he's done. So that's a perfect fit. Now, so obviously a lot of people wanted him to do a third movie, which, you know, didn't end up happening for, you know, whatever number of reasons. So I was definitely bummed about that, but I was excited for this new reboot because everything they were saying about it before the trailer came out sounded amazing on paper. You have Neil Marshall directing, who, you know, I think we're both like really big fans of The Descent.
Yep.
And I also love Dog Soldiers, so I was like, oh, that seems like a perfect fit. He could do a cool, like R-rated horror movie version. And then, they keep talking about, oh, we're gonna go to the comics and everything, because I love again the first two Del Toro movies. I think they do a great job of like kind of recreating the atmosphere of the comic, but they don't really follow the story that well. So the idea that they're, going back to the roots of the comic books actually sounded really interesting. But then, like you said, that first trailer came out and, ooh, man, it seemed like they're really trying to like Suicide Squad it up. Like,
it did. Yeah, that's the comparison, Suicide Squad. Yeah. So, and then the buzz wasn't that good leading up to it. I think the Rotten Tomato score was about 10% in the morning the movie came out. So, we all went off to see the movie, and I came home and I saw that Tim on Twitter had taken a photo of his Letterboxd, and it was his rating of the new Hellboy. And so usually I ask what you feel about it, but I want to introduce it with this. It was a photo of his Letterboxd where he'd rated Hellboy, and it was 5 stars, and some obnoxious caption which I can't remember.
Well, I rated it 5 stars, and then for the review I just put 5 stars, baby.
And then my response to that was, "Oh, Tim, we're going to dance on this," because
that's why I'm here.
Yes, that's why Matt's here. It's not that Matt's usually, I mean, Matt's a regular on 1.21 gigawatts anyway, but I mean that's neither here nor there. This movie is a mess, and I'm starting with that. It is a goddamn mess. Do you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of The Mummy, the 2017 Mummy starring Tom Cruise. It had the same rushed plot where nothing was really setting in. It was kind of rushing through the thing, so there was no atmosphere or build or tension, and like just the constant backstory. Like there's so many scenes in this movie with flashbacks where there's just constant narration over explaining the convoluted history that set up all this crap.
So I'll agree that it's a mess, but I'll also add, but I had a ton of fun. It's like going on bumper cars. Like you might end up with an injury, right? But you're gonna have fun with that injury. So
no, I mean I agree 100%. Like that Letterboxd thing, I was being a little cheeky, and I was kind of trying to counteract like the I think insanely negative reviews, because like I mean I agree with you guys. This movie, like, it's a complete mess, and it's not a good movie. It's not well made. It's like 50 comic book stories jammed in one. Like the pacing's off. There's never any time to breathe. The CGI is pretty bad, but
it's still 5 stars.
Yeah, it's still 5 stars because I had a gigantic, ass-eating smile on my face the whole time.
Ass-eating smile. That's in your face.
You are the destroyer of all things. God damn, Jim.
And I mean, I saw it with 3 of my friends, and we
hold on. I have to ask a question here, Tim.
Yeah.
When you say ass-eating smile, is this the smell you have when you're getting your ass eaten, or when you're eating someone else's ass?
No, I did not sign up for this.
This is the smile your ass has after it just got eaten.
Okay, after it got eaten. Okay.
Oh, good Lord.
Hey Matt, do you want to guest on Scream After Midnight?
No.
Hey, this is a little I mean, this movie is a little vulgar. Let's.
Oh, it is.
Oh, big time.
The best thing I could say about this movie is just some of the. I mean, it felt kind of tacked on in a weird way, but like I did at least kind of enjoy the gore, the various monsters like killing people and stuff. Like, okay, that was kind of fun. Just
yeah. See, I'm not like I'm only familiar with Hellboy from the movies. I bought Hellboy in Mexico a while ago, but I haven't had time to read it. Right, but I only got it because I was at the bookstore and it said Hellboy versus Luchadors, and I was like, I have to buy this. So, now are the comics this grisly, violent, or is that a Neil Marshall thing?
Well, they do get like I don't think they're as what do you call it, like a exploitive because they do get violent, but it's usually not like in your face gore. And also like a lot of the times with the kind of art, like whether it's Mignola or like Richard Corbin or Duncan Fegredo, like they're not the kind of artists they're not like shock artists,
right.
So people might get stabbed and stuff, but it's not like
it's classy.
When they do, there's there's not giant fountains of blood or anything.
Yeah,
like that,
like in this, and that put me off of this because I'm not a big fan of gore. Like it's icky.
I was it. So the thing is though, by the time that the main gory sequence happened, because there's one kind of main big scene, there's a lot of gore. It's kind of like 2/3 in, maybe a bit further than that.
Sure.
I think by that point, because I was like so like done with the movie, I was just like, this is a mess. It's just moving so fast. I don't care about any of these characters. Like I thought, the main sidekick girl. I didn't get the names up on.
Alice.
Was it Alice? Yeah. Like I thought, like she, like I could tell what they were going for with her, but I just didn't think she was that interesting. I thought Daniel Day Kim, who's of course from Angel, the spin-off of the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, is doing this really weird English accent, like the whole movie, and he's not English,
No, that's
Are you sure?
that he's.
I'm fairly certain he's not English.
He was on Angel.
Yes, he was on Angel. What do you mean? Am I sure? Of course I'm sure he's on Angel.
I didn't say, are you sure? I said, I know him from Lost.
Yeah, that's what I thought of.
Yeah, he's on Lost as well. But...
In Hawaii Five-0.
Yeah.
Like,
was he like one of the Wolf?
Matt, if you not met me, do you not know my bit? I do things where it connects to Buffy.
No. I am just being incredulous that he was on Angel.
Yeah, he was a lawyer. He was a Wolfram and Hart. He was one of the lawyers.
Gotcha.
Okay.
It's been ever since I've seen Angel. I wasn't doubting you, Pete. Calm down. Jesus Christ.
No, there was just the way you were saying, but he's more commonly known from Lost. Like, I'm aware of that, but like my whole thing is that I connect things to Buffy. that's what I do.
So
he might be English.
A lot of the gore turned me off, but I am here for the monster designs because that was cool. Those giants, I've never seen giants like that before. The Baba Yaga, that's gonna be
Baba Yaga. that was definitely probably my favorite part in the movie.
Out of anything that felt like Guillermo del Toro, that was the most, because Guillermo del Toro has a very distinct way he dreams up monsters. Like if you've seen a lot of his movies, there's almost a thread that you can tell what's a GDT styled monster.
Yeah.
None of these are those, but that one feels close with just the creepy body proportions and the way that it's herky jerky. Like
I like some of them. I didn't like others. I thought Baba Yaga looked really just kind of cheap and like typical makeup kind of thing.
Unfortunately, like some of the stuff like the CGI and the makeup wasn't always great, but I just really liked what they did with the character. Do you know who played Baba Yaga, Pete?
I
don't think Matt's gonna know, but
I actually didn't recognize who it was. Or maybe I'll know when you say.
well, it's the. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know the specific actor's name, but it's the person who played Pretzel Jack in whatchamacallit, Channel Zero, the last season.
Oh, I never watched the last season.
So he doesn't know either.
Sorry, Timmy.
Oh wow, you messed up, dude. That season was good.
Well, season 3 was terrible though, which is why I didn't see season 4.
Well, season 4 picked it back up. Jesus Christ.
So before Pete goes on a tirade of all the things that made him angry, I just want to say there are some bright spots in here for me as a non-Hellboy big fan like Tim. I love David Harbour as Hellboy.
I thought you did a good job.
Yeah, sure. Harper's dependable.
There was something to him that I forgot. That's the sheriff from Stranger Things. and he was just Hellboy. So, and I don't think it was just the makeup. I just feel like that's the one thing I feel the script really nailed was him. And then I liked Ian McShane as his dad because he was basically Ian McShane. It was completely different from the Guillermo del Toro version, But there was this loving bastard persona that I really liked, and their relationship I felt was really well handled.
A Niles Calder-esque kind of character, you might say.
Oh, sure, Doom Patrol, a thing that I won't watch now.
Tim knows who Niles Calder is. That was more for Tim.
I appreciate it. I haven't been watching the show, but I look forward to it.
So those two bright spots I thought really drove home, and then how it played with folklore, because I'm a big fan of that type of stuff. And again, not that familiar. As soon as this was over, I messaged Tim and go, okay, how much of this is in the books? Because I like what they did with like the Baba Yaga and giants and the history of Britain, and the beast of what's that book? Beast of Revelation from the Bible and stuff. And I feel like the script does do a good job at weaving those in and out when it's not concerned with all these other little things. That's like the Blood Queen.
I will also start with some positives. I'll give you the 2 or 3 positives I have. Some of the gore was fun, although I don't necessarily think it was what I wanted. Like, I wanted a classier, darker horror movie, but but at that point I was like, okay, at least this is kind of something I can enjoy, and just a face value sort of level. Harbour was fine. I kind of liked the pig character. I thought he was kind of funny.
Yeah. Growick.
Yeah.
I never know how to say it, but it's like
it's
or something.
Celtic.
Yeah.
Connor would probably know. He's of those people. He's of the fairy folk.
So, he's probably in the theaters right now.
Yeah. Oh, this is definitely a movie for Connor. I'm gonna have to message him.
I kind of like that. Here's what I really didn't like though. I thought the villain was terrible. I thought Milla Jovovich was just like. I don't even necessarily think she's a bad actress in general, but I thought like all of her dialogue in this and her delivery of it just felt so going through the motions. It's like, here's generic like villain who comes from the past with like.
Yeah, it's very broad strokes, and I get what her mission was, and I get her relationship with Hellboy, but it's like as shallow as a shower. Like, I felt like it should have been developed more, and she could have done more. But like the Blood Queen sucked.
There's plot elements in this where they revealed something and I hated it, and it's probably fine. Like, if those reveals are from the book, they're probably much better in the book, where the book spends time building up the intrigue to make them pay off.
Yeah.
But in this, like, it pulled like things out of like, British legend out of nowhere out of its ass, and I'm like, wait, what? This is connected to Hellboy? Like, what?
Yeah.
Well, I actually do think it is kind of similar to how some stuff is portrayed in the book, because like the book plays off of so much like folklore and stuff, and like there'll be things that it's kind of hard to describe, but like when you read the book, you kind of just go with it, and I think it's easier to convey like in comic book form.
Part of this is based off of the Wild Hunt, right? That story, and that story is, how many issues is that? Is that 4 or 5?
Wild Hunt is, I think that's actually 8. Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's a little longer.
I pulled up the wiki on it just to compare, and it's a long wiki. So like, I almost feel like they could have just focused on the Wild Hunt instead of trying to take in other parts. Like, don't get me wrong, my favorite part of the movie is the open in Tijuana where he fights the vampire luchador.
One of my biggest problems with the movie actually is that I think the first like 30 minutes is almost inconsequential to the rest of it. Like, because there's a whole plot, the actual hunt part where he goes to Britain and there's like the giants to fight and stuff. Like, outside of a couple of foreshadowing things, like that entire plot feels irrelevant, because it's almost like right after that where Ian McShane and the other characters come in and say, hey Hellboy, this thing you were here for, that's not that big a deal, there's something much bigger going on, because the actual plot of the movie is that the Blood Queen's got the pig character collecting her body parts to reform her and take over the world, like that's the plot of the movie.
Release a plague. And it ties into Arthurian legend, because in the beginning you see Ian McShane telling the story of how Arthur stopped the Blood Queen and quartered her etc. I love that stuff.
That stuff looked terrible, though. I hated how that scene looked.
It looked terrible. I'm telling you, the idea in the story. I like that idea for a story, and then they don't land the execution whatsoever, because I never feel there's a struggle for Hellboy to stop the Growick from obtaining these body parts.
Yeah.
Like, Hellboy's never too late to stop him. It's just all of a sudden, the next time you see the Blood Queen, she's only missing a leg. And it looks creepy, but
I mean, I wonder if they only thought that they were gonna get a chance at like one movie, because these could have been like your Infinity Gems. Like you could have had like 8.
Yeah,
but I think that is like definitely like a big problem is. And again, I think it works better in a comic book page. You can have these kind of bigger stories and get away with, kind of like, not letting stuff breathe as much, because you kind of when you're reading a comic, you put the stuff like together in your head as you're reading panels and stuff.
And the panels can last as long as you want them to. If you want to focus on one panel because the panel like hits hard or it has a complex idea in it, you can sit and focus on it. In the movie, they have to just show it and they have to just sort of race through it, and the pacing's just all over the place.
And they never, there's a revelation with Daniel D. Kim's character Daimo that it's only like gradually hinted at. And I picked up on it.
I would go as far to say that it's not great. The first time they hint at it is so out of nowhere. There's just like a scene where it's like, wait, what's going on? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, he has scars on his face. All right, he's Nick Fury. Right. That's what I took from that initially. And then it's not until it's the middle of the fight and he starts doing stuff, and you're like, oh wait, is he? And then it pays off later. Yeah. I don't want to spoil stuff yet, but like, everything is so ham-fisted. It almost like they wrote it with the right hand of doom.
And they also do this thing where like they feel like they're setting up like character themes that they never actually explore. Like I think they set up this idea that Hellboy might even be tempted to side with the villain because he is this misunderstood monster, and everyone looks at him differently, everyone treats him differently, and maybe everyone's assuming she's evil, but maybe she's not. And obviously, it's fine that that's not ultimately the ending, because obviously we have to have a villain and we have to have the journey. But I feel like after like one confrontation with his father, that whole like line of thinking was just dropped completely. It was like they just ignored it for the rest of the film.
Again, it's the execution. There's ideas at play that I like. I like that idea of him being at odds. Like, am I supposed to be this destroyer, or can I save everything?
Arguably, the biggest problem with it is that maybe as well it shouldn't have been in the first movie. That's like, have him doubt like if he's on the right side in the second movie after they've established, because they establish in the movie that he's been doing this for the BPRD for years. There's a flashback to when the pig guy was like a kid size, and I'm like. Because this is
27 years ago. I did the math in the theater.
Because Alice is a baby, so like her backstory actually. So he's been doing this for at least 30 years, like actively as like an agent.
Well, and he's been around since the end of World War II, because we get his origin a little bit again.
Oh sure, yeah.
Which I loved. We'll talk about that in spoiler. Yeah. I popped for that.
Which, and who knows? Like, how long has he been an active agent? I know in the comics he's been an active agent since like the 40s or something like that. But
that's what. So who knows how he ages and whatnot? But we know he's been around since the end of World War II, and they even cover up his dad not aging because of the stuff that happened there. Which again, I like that.
And it's kind of like, if you think about it, a lot of the story is mostly coming from, I would say, 2 books, which would be The Darkness Calls and The Wild Hunt storylines. But those are like volumes 8 and 9 of the series. So, you're definitely like, those are like later stories that if you did want to set up more of a franchise, there's a lot of earlier stuff you could have gone back to and done that first. But
isn't with Hellboy, though, you can read them kind of in any order? Like, they kind of do stand alone. But you get more out of it if you do read them in order.
Well, I would say is there's a lot of standalone stuff, because like sometimes Mignola, like he'll just do like a one shot or like a 2-issue thing, or like just like a 10-page storyline. So but there is like the kind of lore building ones.
Okay.
So it depends. I mean, I think they're all pretty reader friendly. If you like some people get anal about needing to know every little specific thing. So it depends on the kind of reader you are, but I think for the most part, like it helps you can kind of jump in anywhere, but it definitely helps to read them in order.
Okay, well then that strengthens what you just said. Then that like this is later stuff, and then maybe you should have started with something not so steeped in the Hellboy lore.
Yeah. Because the stuff with them fighting giants was fun in terms of just the comedy action of it, but that's the section of the movie that I think is almost redundant. Like you could cut out all that stuff. There's a whole plot where he goes to The reason he goes to England in the first place, you can just cut that. Just no, Blood Queen's getting her body parts. We need to go to England now as a mission. Like, just start with that.
Yeah, I did love they have a giant problem in England. What's the problem?
Yeah.
Giants.
Yeah.
Like that type of stuff. That's what I like. And just the idea of Hellboy fighting giants and punching monsters, I'm there for. Like, I had a lot of fun with all of that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's
the CG though. Like, we hit on that, and the theater I went to didn't have great cell service, and I didn't know if there's post-credit scenes, so I sat through the credits.
I didn't.
No cell service. Can't sit on my phone. I'm reading all of these visual effects artists. I'm like, all y'all people work so hard and it still looked like this? Like, what's going on?
What's the thing, Matt? It's not even about that. It's just like, sure, you might have had 200 visual effects artists on the film, but it takes time to get good visual effects. If they were only paid for a month when it's meant to be 3 months of work, then that's what you get. You get subpar.
It kind of felt like this movie was kind of fast. I don't know how long they were working on it, but it kind of felt like after it was announced, it was like pretty. It wasn't like something that was announced and then like 2 years later the movie finally comes out. It kind of was like announced and then it was like, oh, by the end of the year we're getting this. Like,
yeah, I feel like we just found out Harbour was playing Hellboy like last year.
Yeah,
but I know it was probably longer ago, but it feels like it was yesterday.
Well, and when they first revealed it originally, I think it was supposed to be in January that it was going to come out. Yeah, and then they delayed it a little bit, but still.
A little bit. I remember actually because I remember being Connor for a long time. We're saying that this is going to get delayed heavily because we got to October before a trailer came out, and it was meant to be coming out. Was it still January at that point? I don't know if it was, but
I think they were saying so, or at least speculating.
Yeah. Maybe they should have just released it in the dumping ground that is January.
Maybe they should have done.
Might have done a little bit better. I that said, with the reviews, I feel 10%'s a little too low. I think there's some.
It's maybe not that much of a train wreck, which 10% suggests, but it's definitely not like. It's not.
I'll say this: not being a fan of the character, I enjoyed this far, far, far more than Batman versus Superman, and that might be because I'm a little bit more biased. That's my fandom. Yeah. But like that movie to me was far more of a mess than this.
Well, I think like my difference, and like obviously, like this is a character I feel very attached to, so I should have a stake in this. But I mean, my whole thing is, they swung for the fences. They tried to go big, and it's a gigantic mess. But it's like so bad that you can't help but have fun with it because it's just so over the top and stupid. Like if they went just a very generic middle of the road kind of movie where they played it safe and just tried to imitate the first two movies, I think I would have been more angry with that because it's just like, oh, this is just whatever.
I wish I got the feeling of fun. Like, even though I'm a huge Hellboy fan, I had a lot of fun with it, and I can't say that with the majority of the DC movies that we've gotten. And I only bring that up because that's my central fandom. Like Suicide Squad, I looked over at my wife halfway through and go, I have no idea what's going on. Here, it was a mess, but I still could kind of follow what was going. There was enough of a thread.
I mean, that's a low bar to hold it to, but
well, I just,
I can kind of,
Tim said,
I can kind of follow the story progressions, not high praise.
Well, no, it's because again, you keep calling it this mess and this train wreck or car wreck, and at least this is one you walk away from.
I mean, people were saying that it was the worst comic book adaptation of all time.
No, Venom exists.
Yeah,
it's not Venom. The worst comic book movie of all time. I will accept an argument for Batman v Superman. I honestly will.
Well, that's I just
Four reboot.
Yeah, Fan 4 6 really bad. This is not that bad. I there's parts of this I'd watch again. I asked my wife if she wanted to go because she likes David Harbour.
Oh, and I already got the Blu-ray pre-order.
Oh, good job, Timmy. But so I asked her if she wanted to go, and she saw the Rotten Tomatoes score, and she's like, "Yeah, I'll skip." And when it was done, I called her, and I was like, "Yeah, good call. You would have hated this. Just the gore and the story, she would have been bored."
Yeah.
But that said, there are parts of this I want to watch again, and I'll probably end up buying the Blu-ray when it's cheap. But there's spoilers I want to talk because there's stuff in here I got to quiz Tim about.
Well, so we'll go full spoilers then. So full spoilers for Hellboy from this point on. So here's the first thing I want to complain about in spoilers, right? Can I just say that I'm annoyed that they're rebooting Hellboy, and did we have to do the dad dies story again, like in the movie? Like I feel like this is becoming the Wayne's murder almost. It's like we have to kill off the father figure and.
Well, I mean, my argument for that would be, well, like the difference, like with the Waynes or something, is like they didn't do it the same way. I mean, I'm fine with him like dying again, but at least they did something different with it.
Yeah, we got
that and the flaming crown too. I was like, I'm gonna have to watch him snap his horns off again, aren't I?
Yeah.
Okay, it made for a cool moment, but like.
Yeah, there was definitely some beats they replayed, and I'm like, you could have just avoided this.
Yeah. That said, I feel like they wanted, like, I feel like Neil Marshall wanted those moments. Yeah. I feel those were more for him than they were for anybody.
Because again, I feel like his father dying, does that play better in a second or third movie when we've already, grown with him a bit?
So, possibly, yeah.
You know what? This actually, we talked about that. We talked about Aquaman being overstuffed, and like there was enough stuff for multiple movies. I almost feel this is an easy comparison to make to that. Is Aquaman? I was like, there's a whole lot going on there that we could have paced ourselves out on.
Yeah,
definitely.
So here's my question, Tim.
Okay.
Daimyo, is he a Were Jaguar? Is that what he was?
That's exactly what he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, maybe one thing that's interesting to note is I don't think he ever actually appears in Hellboy. He's a BPRD character, which at the time when he gets introduced, like, the books were pretty like separate. Like at that point, Hellboy was really doing his own thing. So, but I get why they threw him in here because they probably just didn't want to redo Abe and Liz again, which is fine. But I do feel like he doesn't really get that much to do. Like it seems like they are building up to his, to his transformation, but his transformation ultimately doesn't matter because he kind of just gets his ass kicked. Like he fights for a while, but then.
That is one of my biggest pet peeves in movies and TV shows when they spend time building up like the secondary superhero, the secondary monster, whatever it is, and they enter the final fight only to just get their ass kicked and not actually make any difference. And it frustrates me because you spent all this time building it. It's like, how am I supposed to come out of this movie thinking that's a cool character? Thinking this is the someone I need in the next one, because I don't.
Yep. I was like, man, he's in trouble now. The Grok's in huge trouble because this dude's a Were Jaguar.
Yeah.
And then he just handles him, There was no tension, really well, you see him like struggling and like almost hulking out, and there's almost no tension to when he finally turns. His legs trapped and like, oh, okay, here it comes.
I think that's another problem I have with like reboots like this. It's kind of like how Amazing Spider-Man just avoided doing J. Jonah Jameson. It's like, because it's not that long since the last set of movies, we kind of have to just to be, even though it's a major part of the characters to have J. Jonah Jameson, we're going to ignore it just for the sake of trying to be different from the last one. So it's kind of the same thing here. I was actually thinking halfway through, even as someone who's not like a huge Hellboy fan, I'm like, isn't Abe Sapien like a bit more crucial to like Hellboy than what this movie's like pretending? And of course, it ends with a tease where they find Abe Sapien. That's the sequel tease,
which I like. Yeah, I like that. That was cool.
For the sequel, we're never going to get, just for the.
Yeah.
Hey, don't count it out yet.
Tim, did you see how much it made this weekend?
Yeah, but I ain't done seeing it yet. I got some more tickets to buy.
Okay, here's my other thing. So Hellboy is the great many great grandson of King Arthur.
Yes.
Of course, everyone knows that.
Oh, okay, everybody knows that. So I wanted, if they were going to do that, I felt like they needed to seed it a little more because it once they go and meet Merlin, I'm just like, wait,
I hated all this.
There's no seeding, and I love Arthurian legend, and that's why I said Connor needs to see this because he's a sucker for Arthurian legend, And I was just like, he pulls out the flaming sword and it looks cool and all, but like. And then that whole scene, so they go and they find Merlin, and Merlin's like, you have to pull the sword. Whose side is Merlin on? Because, like, if he's telling him he has to pull the sword to defeat the Blood Queen, but if he pulls the sword, he also brings about the end of everything, is he really defeating the Blood Queen? Because that's how I read that scene.
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm not honestly. I'm not sure.
So that's kind of silly. That said, as soon as Milla started talking, I was like, oh, that's a Gleason. I didn't know there was that many of them.
You know,
So it's
you
one
know
of
what's
Brennan Gleason's sons.
it, you know what's pretty funny is there's this podcast called Best Movies Never Made.
Yeah.
Which is a relatively new podcast, and basically they talk about like scripts that never actually ended up getting made. And they had Neil Marshall on, and he was talking about a lot of different projects, but the main focus was he was talking about this like Arthur movie that he wanted to make that never ended up happening. So it was just really funny that I'm watching this. I'm like, oh man, I guess he finally got to make his Arthur movie after
this
all.
makes a lot more sense now.
Like, yeah, I like all this stuff was just so high concept and like tying him into a theory and legend. I mean, is that a thing from the comics? Like, is he a descendant?
100%.
Okay, but here's the thing. I'm assuming that in the comics, though, they spend time building up who his human mother is, and then spend time building up to the fact that she's a descendant of like King Arthur, like, or maybe the other way around. I don't know, like. But
no, actually, you'd be surprised. It is kind of comes out of left field.
Really? Okay. Well, I probably won't like that in the comics either. But it really.
But again, though, like when I mean, it's hard to describe. But when you read the comic, it is like it is like a crazy idea, but it definitely does like it prepares you more than it does in this.
Yeah, when I read the comic, they made a big deal about how Arthur, his son Mordred kills him, right? And he's this, half witch person, and then that line ends up creating witches, right? So it's not this noble line of kings that they would have you believe Arthur is the, ancestor for. So it makes sense in the comic, at least from what I read in the wiki, that he's a descendant of these witches down the line, and of course he ends up becoming the hellspawn that becomes the destroyer of all things. This completely whiffs on it, and I was like, oh, Hellboy's mom's a mortal woman. Shit, I had no clue on that one.
There was like I don't even know if it was a full issue.
I mean,
it might have just been like
Hellboy's basically a Raven. Let's just admit it.
Well, that's kind of right.
Yeah, I mean, it's Trigon with the Earth Woman.
Yeah.
There you go.
Except, yeah, but what are some other things? So, I like the idea of Alice being able to punch the souls out of things. Like,
yeah.
But again, that was a little bit Deus Ex Machina.
It was just out of nowhere.
Like,
I would say this would probably be like the biggest change from the comics, because Alice is in the comics, and yes, she does. She is that whole thing with the being a baby and having changelings, which that's from that's from the Corpse, which is like it's just a one shot, but it's like one of the best like Hellboy stories ever.
Well, that's the folklore stuff I was talking about, because I was familiar with that from deep diving on The Brave and the Bold, the Liam Sharp Batman Wonder Woman, so learning about Celtic mythology and about changelings and stuff. So that came up. I was like, oh, this is cool. This is the type of Hellboy I want. Him showing up for these, one-off type things, But and then her being able to punch the souls out of zombies, I was like,
that's that's totally new. But to be honest, I'm not against it. Like I thought she was a likable enough character, but it is kind of funny when they do it, because she says something stupid like she's just like, I guess I got powers now or something like something like really crazy.
The problem with Alice for me is that I could see what they were trying to do with her, and I thought like I can see how this is supposed to be likable, but it felt like. I don't know. It felt like, again, going through this motion of like it's the same with the whole Arthur thing. Like every time I went to these flashbacks, it felt like just any other generic movie that wants to have the you know how like, Tim in horror movies, like sometimes they'll do the flashback near the start of like explaining the backstory of the horror villain or the ghost or whatever. The start of like the fact the movies that we've got up for vote for the next Patreon pick. Like I'm pretty sure like at least 3 of those start with a flashback like this.
Yeah.
And it made me think of that, and it was just like similar thing. And like I want to like Alice, I really do. Like Alice is supposed to be the likable, quirky one that's got the smart mouth. Daniel Day Kim's character is supposed to be kind of the tough asshole, but by the end of the movie, he bonds with the main character. Yeah. That's supposed to be what these characters are. I can see the archetypes, but they just feel a little bit off, and it just wasn't quite clicking for me. But can we talk about how like we jump forward like 6 months at the end of the movie, and there's a scene where they ended the fight Abe Sapien in his tank, but. the scene's like an action scene set to kickstart my heart, where the three of them, who are now a team for the BPRD, are just going through the room, and it's like a one-hour of them just like taking all these bad guys out. And I'm like, damn, Alice learned to like fight and shoot in like 6 months.
Yo, she's got magic brass knuckles now. That said, I love that scene. Like, it's cotton candy though. There's no substance to it, but it's amazing.
Here's the thing.
Like, it gives you a sugar high.
Here's the thing.
So,
see if the rest of the movie had been good and I cared about their bond, like I cared about them becoming a team over the course of the movie, I would have loved this scene. But because they didn't do that, because it wasn't like I don't know, pick a movie where a ragtag group of characters become a family or a team. Like, it wasn't.
Fast and the Furious.
That's good.
Sure. I mean, I don't know. I guess because there's three of them, I'm thinking of Uncharted. But I mean, that's obviously a video game.
Yeah, I haven't played those yet. Spoilers, bro.
Oh, I'm so sorry. The three main characters who are together through all 4 games.
15. They've been out for 15 years. It's my fault, but still, I want to go through that journey. Yeah. So I mean, I like that.
I think you might be asking for too much, because I mean, if you get to the end of the movie and you're still having like. Did you not see the rest of the movie? Like this movie is like crazy. Like you got to get on board with it quick, man.
Shut up, Timmy. No, seriously though. Like if I cared about their bond, if I was like even if I had problems with the plot, if I cared about their connection, if I cared about them, it's kind of like Stephen King's It, right? That movie's plot and the actual horror elements are kind of weak sauce. But I liked that movie because I cared about the kids and their bond, because they felt like a group of kids who were together and stuck up for each other. And if I had gotten that kind of feeling with these 3 characters, where there are these 3 misfits, I guess this is, I'm thinking of Doom Patrol, I'm thinking of just any superhero show where
you got such a boner for that show.
It's just it's because it's on right now, but in that show specifically, they are misfits. They are kind of like, Robot Man's not dissimilar to Hellboy in some aspects in his attitude. I can almost hear Brendan Fraser saying "What the f" coming out of Hellboy's mouth. Like, it works.
I will say, Hellboy was life goals to be grumpy. Like that dude does it well. Like
well, that's like the whole thing with the character is I kind of like that he's this guy that has this big destiny, but like he's just constantly like he doesn't care about it, but he's just constantly thrust in these situations, and his basically general reaction to everything is just like, oh crap. Like I don't know, I love that.
It's the sigh. It's the
yeah.
Yeah, he's just tired. Yeah.
I relate to that so much.
Also, I did notice they took out his cat affection in this movie. There was no cats.
Yeah, or pancakes, for that matter.
Yeah, well, to be fair, the whole cat thing, it was never from the comics. That was a GDT thing.
That's a GDT and Ron Perlman thing.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
I almost preferred this Hellboy, though, to Ron Perlman's version. Ron Perlman's pretty good, but I feel like he's the more put upon type.
I love how Tim's got a pet name for his favorite director. He's like GTT.
Everyone refers to him that way.
That's a total not out loud. That's how you write it down. You don't say it out loud.
Oh, I do. What? He's one of the type that I would love to sit and talk to him more than watch his movies. I like the majority of the ones.
That's my sentiment, Matt. You've stolen that from me. I've said that before.
Yeah, I know, but like, I'll watch his movies more than you. Like when he has a new one come out,
I don't really like his movies, but I like how, as a person, GDT, if I'm using that phrase, seems like a really enthusiastic guy that I think I could talk to for hours. But
I feel like him and Ryan Gosling both milked Disney out of a free trip to Disneyland because they said they wanted to work on a Haunted Mansion movie, and then they just never delivered on it. They're just like, we don't want to do it now.
I'm assuming I'm probably the only one that has a GDT action figure.
Yes, that would
be. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Where can I get one?
I know he's serious. I can tell he's serious.
It's from. It was from NECA. It was a Comic-Con exclusive last year. I don't know if it's if it's more available now, but I'll show it to you.
But yeah. So those are my main thoughts. I had Lobster Johnson.
Yes.
I was not expecting that, and I only have a brief. I know he hates Nazis and he punches people. Good for me. So that scene where he shows up and it's Thomas Hayden Church overdoing everything. I'm there for that.
Yeah.
Did you stay for the post credit, Pete?
Nah, as soon as the credits started rolling, I was like, I don't care if there's a post credits, I'm leaving.
So how I realized there was a post credit is my theater didn't turn the lights back up, so I was like, I better stay. And then there's this post credit where Hellboy's getting drunk at his dad's grave, and Lobster Johnson shows up, and Hellboy fanboys out, and I loved it because he tries to snap himself up into being a presentable being, you know, and Lobster Johnson's like, stop crying. Your dad wouldn't want you to do this. Toughen up. He's like, can I see the claw? You know, and then it ends up being Lobster Johnson's ghost, and he walks through him.
And that's so great. It's just like from when he was first introduced in the Conqueror Worm, like, you know, like not everyone believes that Lobster Johnson is real, but you know, like Hellboy, because he's like a comic book character, but like Hellboy is the one that was like, no, he's real, he exists. And so like I love that they keep that in, that he's like just a huge fanboy of this guy.
That was great.
Now, the Lobster Johnson stuff was fun, but I will say I did think the flashback to like Hellboy's like origin, if you will.
Yeah.
It did feel oddly kind of cheap because I could remember the original version of this scene, and I was like, this looks really cheap because one of the Nazis, now I'm a sucker for visors, Matt. You know I do.
Yes.
I love my visors. And one of the Nazis has got this red and blue, like, you know, almost like old school.
No, they're old school 3D.
Yeah. But it was like goggles though. It was like thick goggles. Yeah. But they looked really cheap. Like I thought, they could look better. It just there was little things like that took me out of it. I was like, this looks a bit, you know.
Is that the
I popped for that. We all know how I love pulp.
Not the only thing, no.
But yeah, those are all my talking points.
What does this mean? This pop? What do you mean when you pop for something?
So it's a term from wrestling. It's when something cool happens and you have a physical reaction, and you're just like, So,
it's basically like a nerd out moment or a cheering moment for yourself.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like an erection thing.
It's comprisable sometimes. When Johnny Gargano hits the Gargano escape, I'm gonna say there might be more than one type of pop going on.
So, how was the wrestling in the beginning? Was that
it's
handled well?
I feel like Guillermo del Toro, I felt, would have directed it better because he loves wrestling.
Yeah.
Like Blade 2,
It
was fine. I just felt like they got the lucha stuff pretty well. I wanted to see who was the lucha coordinator, but we'll use a wrestling term. They booked Hellboy like a big lumbering guy. He was very, I don't want to say Andre-esque, but that was his moveset. But it's pretty good. I want a movie of that. Like, you give me lucha vampires, and I'm so there. So
I would be all over that. I like
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was just gonna another kind of thing I was just gonna pivot to is gonna ask how you thought about some of the comedy in it, like the jokes, the one-liners, because normally this is a lot of stuff that I would kind of roll my eyes out, but because everything in this movie was so dumb and cheesy and over the top, like it just worked for me. Like I was laughing at a lot of stuff, like probably not the way that it's intended to be laughed at, but again, like I saw this with a couple of my friends, and we're just constantly like laughing and looking at each other like throughout the whole movie. But then there's some like really bad puns in this movie, especially the ending.
Remind me.
He's throwing her head into like the pit of hell, and what does he say? Like don't get ahead of yourself.
Yep.
That's an Austin Powers joke.
It's very Vader in Rogue One. Don't choke on your emotions.
Oh god, yeah.
But I preferred it to I preferred Hellboy because Hellboy's the type of person to make that lame joke.
Actually, a joke that I like legitimately laughed at is when he was just wrecked after Esteban got killed, and he was just getting drunk in Mexico, and they come and they're like, Hellboy, and he's like, no, I'm Josh, but people mix us up all the time.
Yeah.
That was a good joke.
Yeah. See, and I felt like I wanted to care, like Hellboy caring over his buddy that died in Mexico.
Yeah.
I felt was the most he cared about even his dad, his new team members. So I know, like, it's almost there, and it's still.
Yeah, like I think that they really wanted the dad relationship to kind of be the crux of the movie, which I feel like the scenes we get like are good, but I feel like that maybe yeah, maybe like Pete was saying that if he saved it for like a second or third
Yeah.
movie, it maybe would have had more weight because it feels like we didn't get enough like backstory into how their relationship has been throughout the
Yeah.
years to really fully embrace
Yeah,
that.
there's
Yeah.
not a lot of it there. It kind of pretends
No.
there is, but there isn't. It's
Yeah.
Well,
weird.
because even with his friend in Mexico, his dad sets him up. He's like, he's not your friend. He's just someone you get drunk with. And
Yeah.
that was like, yeah, that's a friend. Like, you know, so that has more setup. But yeah.
Or a
So
bartender.
yeah. So anyway,
and like the other stuff like I really liked again was like the kind of like the really crazy like lore kind of stuff out there. Like I really liked all the Baba Yaga stuff. Like that was like to me it seems like that's what I was expecting more when they were getting at that, like, oh, we're gonna do an R-rated horror filled movie. I was like, oh, this is like a creepy scene. Like I think like Baba could have looked a little better, but I did like the way she like moved and
the
stuff was very
stuff,
like
and it was
unsettling.
When I saw the house on chicken feet, I was like, oh,
yeah,
Baba Yaga. Like, because again, folklore. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think like for me, like I mentioned this earlier, but just to go into more detail now, we're in spoilers, is the when the hell's opening up and these giant monsters come out and like they're just stepping on people, they're biting people in half. They're just one guy, one monster. He basically impales a guy on his own spike in his chest. He just goes like, and then throws him to the side.
There's like one that's walking that like just has like tons of people. Like it's a quick shot, but you just see, and it's like they're just all impaled on. It's and again, like this is just the kind of thing that like normally I would not be like for this kind of stuff, but I mean at that point in the movie I'm just like, you know what, do it, like go big, like just be as crazy ridiculous as you want.
I kind of liked it because it made me think of The Mist bizarrely, like just the way these things were walking around.
It
was making me think
or The Ritual, like when you finally see that
sure, The Ritual, and I was kind of into that, but I mean at this point it was too little too late, like at this point I was already like out, but that's what it is. I suppose we should get to ratings and
well, wait, before one last thing before we do that though, Matt, did you stay for the final credit scene?
I did, and I know enough about Hellboy that I know who that's supposed to be.
Okay, nice.
So,
what's the final credit scene? What did I miss?
So you see Baba Yaga is talking to someone that you don't know who it is, but she's basically like saying like, oh, like I want you to track Hellboy down, so because I need to get my eye, and if you do, I'll give you the freedom you deserve and finally kill you.
You'll finally get to die.
Yeah. So just a very cool like nod to the comics, because I think it's safe to assume she's speaking to, again, not sure how to pronounce this, but I think Koshi. It's like Koschei.
Shoot, I thought it was Rasputin. He can never die.
No. Oh no! Because this guy, and again, it's another person that appears in, I forget if it's Darkness Calls or Wild Hunt, but it was one of those. But he is basically like this kick-ass warrior who is granted immortality. Yeah, okay. And then so like Baba Yaga, she takes his she takes his soul and puts it in. So I think she puts it in an egg inside a duck inside a
it says here from the folklore, he has hidden his soul nested inside objects, usually in a needle, which is in an egg, which is then in a duck or other things. So his soul's in a Russian nesting doll.
Yeah, and so eventually it ends up being inside a goat, and then only she knows where the goat is, so he can't die. And then, but it was just really cool. I like the character a lot, and it would be very awesome for the sequel, which will come out.
Holy crap! Yeah, I gotta start reading these books, man, because I just read that, and that is.
Tim, I'm sorry, but that sequel ain't happening.
All right, you want to bet on it?
You can bet on it. I will happily bet on it.
All right, what do you want to bet? Your life?
Tim, don't do it. Don't do it, Tim. Let me be the voice of reason here.
Well,
Tim,
my friend brought up.
it opened at $12 million at number 3. It's done. Let's say get a sequel.
All right, I'm sorry, Mr. Moneybags. I guess $12 million is not a lot to you, but to me, that is a lot.
For a movie, though, Timmy.
For a movie, that's bad. That's not even like a quarter of its budget.
Well, we'll see. It could have a long running time.
In Europe, where judging from the credits, a lot of this movie was worked on, and they might love it. You know.
And again, Pete, I don't think you understand how many more times I'm going to go see this movie.
All right. What do we rate?
Yeah, go on, Tim. What are you rating
it? No, I don't remember what I was going to say.
Okay.
Is my
Tim.
cat that distracted? Come on, Tim. What are you rating it?
What? I can't. I'm sorry. The internet keeps cutting out. What are you saying?
Rating out of 10. Rating.
Ratings. Sorry. So, I mean, obviously, like, I don't think this is a movie you can kind of, look at like critically. I mean, obviously you can, but it's just gonna be like a like
I will, Tim. Don't you worry.
I mean, like on a technicality level, I think that it would probably be like in the 3-ish region, but I do have my rule, of course, which is if Hellboy is in the movie, that's an automatic 3 points. So that's going to bump it up a little bit. And then I gotta factor in my enjoyment factor, which I would be lying if I said I did not have a gigantic, I think as Pete put it, ass-eating smile the whole time during the movie.
Wait a minute.
So...
That was Tim.
We'll see on the playback, but so I mean, just the sheer enjoyment and laughter and stuff I got from it, it's got to add at least 2 points. So I'll give it a straight 8. Not as good as the other ones, but
I love how he admitted it was a 3 and then added on 5 points somehow.
Matt, we all thought Rasputin was the mad monk, but it's really Timmy. Timmy's the true mad monk.
Yeah, baby. 5 stars. Letterbox. Follow me.
Which, by the way, that is like the same score he gave The Boy, the recent horror film, which was terrible.
I gotta say, whoever runs the Screams After Midnight Twitter gave me quite a laugh on one of my hockey tweets the other night, where I yelled "Shorty number 2," and they responded, "Yes, I too am excited for The Boy too." I laughed for 5 minutes. I kid you not.
One guess as to which one of us, because obviously me and Tim are both on that Twitter account. One guess as to which one wrote that tweet.
Yeah,
it's Pete. Duh.
Oh, yes,
obviously. I love when like Pete feels the need to like defend himself. Like he'll come on and be like, "I didn't write that."
So if I'm rating it, and Tim was only going to give it a 3. How could I justify anything higher than that? But
I gave it.
I too. No, I know, but that's because of your Hellboy bias. But I'm gonna, my grading system's all over the place, anyways. So I'm gonna give it a 4.5 because I had enough of a good time. But it's a mess. I'm not recommending this to a ton of people, So,
I'm going to give it an actual 3 out of 10. No caveats, no qualifiers, no like here's some bonus points. 3 out of 10. Just a straight 3.
I'm doing some math on this here. I think that comes out to about a 7.5 or so. So not bad. Good outing for the old Big Red HB.
Let's average this out, which would be our Rotten Tomato score between the 3 of us. So Pete gave it a 3, I gave it a 4.5, Tim gave it an 8.
Yeah.
Let's bump it up to 8.5.
I must come out to like a 5 or something like that. Maybe even a little bit less.
It's a 5.1 average, so that's up 50%, which
so that's not. Yeah, I mean it's a lot better than whatever the 9.
Yeah, I think the critics are going a little bit too far with the not liking it, but I also can't blame them because again, I'm not recommending it to people.
But here's the thing though, like 9% just means that 90% of people rated it under a 5, and that's. I mean, we all agreed that's fair.
Yeah.
Like, they could all be given a 4 out of 10, and that's not even that harsh for this movie.
And And to be fair, I have actually talked to like a decent amount of people because I mean, obviously, like when you're known for something, like everyone's been reaching out to me after they see the movie. But everyone I talked to, like, has pretty much had the same consensus, which is obviously not a good movie, but holy hell, did I have so much fun with it! Like everyone I talked to is like, yeah, it's very bad, very flawed. I can give you a list of complaints like the size of a CVS receipt, but like. At the end of the day, you can't help but be smiling and laughing at it.
The most positive thing I'll say is that one review blurb on Rotten Tomatoes that compared it to an Uwe Boll movie. I will say that was a bit harsh because it's not Uwe Boll bad, but
no. Sure, yeah,
that's my sentiment. But that does wrap up then our discussion on Hellboy 2019. Maybe if Tim is somehow the luckiest man on earth, we get a sequel to this in a couple of years. We'll be back to talk about that.
I never thought we would get this movie. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. So next time we have a Jigowatts, it should be the same three people. It should be us, all three of us, for Avengers Endgame in 2 weeks' time.
Buddy.
If I can get
whatever
tickets.
It takes.
You can get tickets, Timmy. I have faith in you.
Every showing, at least for like Thursday and Friday, have been sold out, but I'm still trying.
Sell a kidney, Timmy.
So yeah, you could get that in a couple of weeks. That's been Hellboy. Let us know what you think of the movie in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. If you want to support the show and the channel and everything we do here, you can head over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, where you can support us for as little as $1 per month. You get some stuff early, you get some bonuses. Me and Tim do Screams After Midnight, the horror movie podcast, and there's a bonus episode of that once per month at the $1 tier, as well as some other stuff. So go have a look. See, Tim mentioned Letterboxd. What's your Letterboxd, Tim? Where can people follow you on Letterboxd?
I think it's at Tim Vargulish. Everything is either at Tim Vargulish or T Vargulish, so try one of those.
Yeah, I'm at Wibble89 on Letterboxd and Twitter as well, of course, which is on the screen. So, but that is us. So yeah, get us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching movies, guys. And if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.